What about the others? I'm curious about. Well, you kind of tied in the two. What about the nephew and yeah,
Oh, you mean the one I'm trying to ignore? You mean the one
yeah.
I'm trying not the one I'm trying?
I mean, I'm just curious. You know, you.
No. I'm glad. I appreciate that. I was definitely leaving it at that.
He's like, I'm gonna see if he sees this one.
That's great. That's great. That's great. That's great. Um, yeah. I think it brings a lot of sadness. I think it brings a lot of
Mm,
sadness. Both my brother and his son, which is my nephew, they're both incarcerated right now.
mm,
And
yeah.
I remember my nephew was, I was when he was young. His mom, she didn't. She was really like not really providing our family a lot of opportunity to connect with him as much as we wanted to. My
Mm,
brother has spent a lot of my nephew's life in jail, and when my nephew was featured in this documentary, the statement he said on screen was, um, "My dad is in jail, and I don't think I ever remember seeing my dad not in jail."
wow.
And to now have them both there. I mean, my brother had got out for many years, and just got sucked into the mess, the madness of Oakland streets,
Yeah.
and so now they're both there. It was just kind of like it's sad, right? It's sad to me that I work with young people, I work with young men, I work with men, and I'm powerless against my own family, you know.
Mm.
How men cry. That's what our guest has been talking about. Dxtr Spits is a poet, he's an entrepreneur, he's an engineer. He is on a movement around making space for men to talk about our wellness and our health and our mental health. Here's one of the quotes I want you to think about. He says, "With how men cry, we're not even really just talking about physical tears. It's really about all the different ways that we can cry out. Essentially, from not processing pain or trauma or some of these things that we hide behind the mask. Where do we get a place to cry out?" I really want you to really lean into this conversation around men, tears, and how we break free from those worries about what people are going to think of us, about what we are going to break free from the idea of conversations with other men where we say, "Hey, brother, I see you and I'm here for you. And I'm not having no expectation of you, but I want you to know that if you need to emote in some way, that I can hold space for you." I think oftentimes the fear of what another man would say may cause us to not even ever let ourselves be fully seen. The work that we're doing in Ever Forward Club is started with that. It started with a lunchtime meeting with some young men, and that circle, those lunchtime circles, is what has created this movement 19 years later. And I'm so excited for Dxtr Spits, and they were just featured in Forbes online, and that is a great recognition for his work. And so in this conversation, we talk about our own masks, and we talk about how sometimes as we battle through challenges in life, whether they may be emotional challenges, substances, whether they may be thoughts that go through our minds, family challenges, past traumas, things that are passed down through our DNA that we don't even know is happening. Those are the conversations that we need to have with men and boys and everyone around the world. And we're excited in these conversations that we continue to get to meet men who are willing to share their mask. If you haven't made a mask yet, you can do that at millionmask.org anonymously. And I'm excited about this conversation. A couple of things I want to just give you some heads up on in terms of not only this movement that we are doing with the Million Mask movement, but what's coming up. So the millionmaskmovement.org, so millionmask.org, is a digital tool that's available to schools all over the world. We created it for being able to serve schools that we weren't able to send materials to, or they weren't able to come to a training. And so you have access to that right now. Over this summer, we will be building out the next version of that tool. We will have our Social Emotional Leadership Academy with young men here in the Bay Area. And if your school, wherever you are in the world, needs some extra supports, please don't hesitate to reach out to us around that. We're excited that these conversations allows us to meet more people that are really passionate about making space for men of all ages, from all backgrounds, to have these healthy conversations. And then for anyone listening, they get a chance to recognize that all men are not the same, but that we all are human and fully human. So please enjoy today's episode with Dxtr Spits. I'm excited about our partnership in the future, about how we can work together and making sure that people around the world realize that they're not alone. And if you've been ever felt like you were alone, if you ever thought that, if you felt that recently, I want you to know that there's so much more to you than anybody can see by just looking at you. Thank you for being a part of the Million Mask Movement. Thank you for listening. And please, if you have any questions for us, please write us, share the podcast with somebody who you think can benefit from it. If there's anyone you think we should be talking to, please nominate them, let us know about them, give us a review, let us know how we can continue using this content to serve the needs of our communities. Thank you for being a part of the Million Mask Movement. Thank you for being a part of the Taking Out the Mask podcast. We'll see you soon. Bye now. Dxtr Spits, welcome to the Taking Out the Mask podcast. I'm glad to have you.
What's going on, man? How are you? Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm glad you're with us. How about this? Just to get us started, will you introduce yourself? Tell folks what you want them to know about you before we jump into these masks.
Yeah, absolutely. So my background, I have a formal job kind of as a nerd, but also have been ran some startup companies for a while now. My most recent project being called How Men Cry, which is actually centered around changing narratives around men's mental health and vulnerability, and just kind of normalizing the conversations of going to seek help. So essentially I use my skills within music and most recently spoken word and literary material to kind of open up these conversations either through my performance or through facilitated talks.
Well, thank you, Dxtr, for being here on the show. I appreciate this, and I'm excited to be in this conversation with you. I was really excited to learn about you and learn about your work. And these conversations are what we're trying to normalize, and I'm really excited the work that you're doing. Um, how men cry. It's a topic that's actually probably pretty provocative for a lot of men, right?
Sure.
Like how do we cry, or why we
Do
don't
we?
cry, right? Like all the layers of where crying shows up in our lives, if we allow it to, and making
Hmm.
room for it. And so I think I'm excited to learn more about that and also about you. So thank you for being here.
Yeah, for sure. And one of the things with How Men Cry is we're not even really just talking about physical tears. It's really about all the different ways, that we can cry out, essentially from not processing pain or trauma or some of these things that, you would probably say we kind of hide behind the mask. So there's definitely a lot of synergy with, the two conversations that we're having.
Right on. Well, as, I know that crying was always a taboo in my growing up, so, and I didn't have a father around, so there was definitely no man showing me, oh, here are the times that here's some room to do it. It was always like, boys don't cry, men don't cry, suck it up, be a man up, like all the things that made you not be able to cry out, even when there were things that, I mean, I think technically should have warranted you being able and not feeling afraid to cry out for support, for help, for care, for love, for validation, for all the things that we're told we're not supposed to need, right? I think
Hmm.
those are challenging. So I'm excited. I'm excited to learn more about that project, and I look forward to. So, as a guest, you get to decide who goes first, and you already have your mask, so I'm kind of getting mine finished here. You get to decide who goes first. So either you go first or I go first, and the guest gets to decide.
I guess I can go first. I'll give you the time to finish.
Oh no, and
Uh,
I was planning that we were gonna either do it together or I would do it,
or a
with you.
yeah.
But you already have yours, so don't whatever you decide, it will work. I don't mind either
Right.
way.
All right. So do I show? I'm assuming I show the mask side first, and
Just the
then
front, yeah. Just fold if you have folded in half
yeah.
or however you have it set up.
Yep.
Yeah. Um,
So we ready for the big reveal? Do we do like a drum roll?
I imagine the engineer may do something like that. I'm not gonna. I don't have any sound effects over here. We just plain simple right here. Just, this is like my
Yeah.
office, you know. It's like a studio office, you know.
So this would be mine, my little dopey mask looking here. Um,
Mm,
but I have courage, smarts, and strength.
mm.
Would definitely be kind of the values that I feel like I show, or at least I would say people also feel like I kind of lead with. Um, Now, do I flip now, or do I wait for you?
No, the guest gets to decide the flow. So, do you want to say anything about any of those on the front? You want to say anything about any of those words or
So,
any?
so one, kind of to the point that you were saying about what you were able to show and not able to show coming up, for sure around things like courage, which I have since heard that courage is feeling fear or feeling nerves and kind of jumping out there to do something anyway. Where I think probably the way that I learned about that word was more so like, you ain't afraid of nothing, you're not scared of nothing, no fear, no whatever all of that is, and then presenting in the world that way, which just isn't even realistic. And then I would say I just put smarts as a more over and encompassing thing of just trying to show um, your level. Like, the world has changed in a bit where the way that we almost kind of get ahead or show your dominance in the world, if you will, is through the way that we're savvy and kind of navigate all these different pathways. Or if you work in a company, it's how you navigate with your intelligence and all these things to climb your way up, all of that type of stuff. Where I would say it's less ego attached for me now, but it's still kind of one of the things where it's like, okay, I feel good if somebody recognizes that I have this intelligence or something. And then strength in I would say a physical and mental way. Of there's I think strength and toughness are kind of synonyms to me sometimes, with how maybe I still kind of present, even if I'm in the process of challenging where it comes from. But just these ideas of kind of I would say protecting from too much vulnerability. And there are benefits to it of having this strength and resilience and toughness. And like, I've boxed for most of my life. I've like started these business and projects, and there is a level of needing to kind of have a mental fortitude and toughness, but then at the same time, it can be to your detriment if too much of it. So, yeah.
Nice, nice. I really resonate, and I think I I borrowed one of those words that I don't usually put on the front, but it's a word that I like, and so um, should I go? Ready for me to go
Yeah,
next?
yeah, sure. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I usually have some color on my mask, but today is just it's pretty black and white, right? I drew this character's mask here, and the words I wrote, words I originally wrote were funny, serious, and caring.
Hmm.
And as I heard you share, I added smarts.
Nice.
And actually, I don't think I've ever used that on the front. I don't think I've ever used that. I usually put like hardworking.
Yeah.
I've made lots of masks over the years, but I've used like dedicated, passionate.
Hmm.
I don't think I've ever wrote that I try and show people I'm smart, even though that's actually a big one. And it wasn't always. I mean, in high school, being smart wasn't cool. So I kind of tried to
True.
pretend that I wasn't too smart so that it wouldn't create too much attention in that way. But the journey since has been like, I majored in engineering, right? So
Yeah.
I wanted to be smart, and in college, it was a very much different expectation, right? Like
Yeah.
sometimes I just didn't feel like I was smart enough. It was like, wow, these people here are heck of smart. Goodness gracious.
You,
Like, you know what I'm saying?
same actually. I did material science engineering
Okay.
actually. So I know that
Yeah.
feeling of I was like, oh yeah, I'm not that smart. I realized
Mm.
I realized that.
Well, I think it's sadness about comparing, right? It's a sadness about comparing,
Hmm.
right? One of my mentors says comparison is a thief of all happiness, right? And so we find
Yeah.
ourselves comparing to others. There's always going to be somebody who's going to be smarter, have more, be able to do other things. And I was clear that from the high school I came from. Thank goodness I was at at Cal Poly, right? I was glad to be there, right, at a top engineering school. I had worked real hard, but when I got there, I was like, what the heck? Or what were these people eating in high school? Because they were eating some, I don't know what kind of brain juice they were eating, but I didn't get no doses of some of this stuff, like. But
Yeah.
when you get to college, you're at the top of all the top, right? Of academically people who are in in the college environment, as it was in my high school, where it was like competing against the top 7 or 8 people who were at the top of the academics, and we were competing for number one, right? I think it,
Yeah.
it turned into another place where it's like, oh wow, this is another world. Um,
Yeah.
so I put that there, and I thank you for sharing that word. I'm gonna start incorporating that word more on the front because it's true, and it's something that I don't think I've always in my life been comfortable writing that, but I think something that I do want people to know. I want to show people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. And what about
Um,
some of the others that you wrote?
Funny, serious, caring. I think that when I think about between, let me look at the. If you look at the face, it's like almost like it's trying to smile, but it's also really intense, right? It's like there's a little
Hmm.
curve in there, and I think I like laughing. I love laughing. I think I've had to learn as a leader in my own way of like, how do I navigate funny laughing
Hmm.
with serious, because I think sometimes because I want to keep it light a lot of times, I'm not always really clear.
Hmm.
And so because I'm trying to keep things light and levity, I'm not as clear as I need to be when I'm trying to help somebody to correct some behaviors or some work performance, right? I'm trying to take it light and be nice about it and be kind about it, and I don't always communicate the severity of it because
Sure.
my serious is sometimes so intense. It's hard to be serious and funny at the same time. It's like, hey, I think I need you to do XYZ, and they don't hear the serious part in it. They only sees the funny, right? Or
Yeah.
the light, level hearted, right? And I think that then by the time I've gotten to a place of frustration, then they're like, why hadn't you said something before? And I'm like, I've been saying this for weeks, right? But because
I've just been smiling.
I've been smiling the whole time, and if I'm not actually purposely smiling, my lips are shaped where I'm frowning. Like
Yeah.
that's just I earned them from my father, right? That look is like a not even thinking about anything. Look, people are like, why are you? What are you mad about? What's happening? I'm like, huh? I'm not even what.
You
I'm
just
not even
chilling.
paying. I'm not even thinking about nothing, right? Like, but because that look, and so I always have to. I'm always trying to purposely keep myself in a place of like, oh hey, everything's right. And also because I'm 6'1", I'm 300 pounds, like walking down the street, like like it's almost like trying to disarm. I have no desire to I'm not into fighting. I don't like fighting. I'm not really have no desire to, but because I carry this size, then I'm always having to disarm. So I'm always trying to show that I'm not here to create any harm.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Whether I'm on the metro or the BART, or whether I'm on, walking in a grocery store. And then when COVID came, then you're wearing a mask. So I'm first now big presence. I got this serious look sometimes, and now all you can see is my eyes. So hopefully there's a little bit of confidence or trust there. But it's also like, how do you smile with your eyes? How do you let somebody know, hey, I'm when you can't tell, right? So now you're like overly cautious of how the impression is made. And that's one of the things. So those are the things that
Yeah.
I think sometimes too, and caring, I think is a newer word that I've started using because I do want to show those things. I try to show those things, and just making sure. I mean, in my growing up, I couldn't be too caring. Too caring is too. Yeah, no, you can't do that. So
Yeah, and I would.
that's the. No, go
Oh,
ahead,
sorry.
please.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think mine all have kind of like a duality to them. Even as you say it, if I could throw on a fourth, it would probably be um, vulnerability in there.
Mm,
And I would say the reason why I would do it, I actually have a statement that's kind of like there's a strength in vulnerability too, where I think before maybe that was something that I've would have covered, a lot more. Where now it's like more on the forefront of kind of, what I do or what I don't mind showing,
mm,
So
yeah. Now, is
yeah.
that something that you don't mind showing? Is that something that you feel? Do you feel yourself feeling really attempting to be vulnerable in more places, or do you feel it's like you're willing to do it?
I would say I find myself seeking to do so more because I
Mm,
see the whether in personal relationships or in business
mm,
or whatever it is, it actually is sometimes just a strong suit of even just kind of I would say disarming the conversation a bit sometimes because if it's
mm,
like, hey, I actually haven't worked with this system before, or I haven't worked with this whatever it is before, and I'm still
yeah.
trying to, learn this thing, and then let's try to talk about it, collectively. That is easier than just trying to go in, with the kind of bullheaded approach of, well, I know how to do all of this, and then you end up not knowing how to do it, or whatever it
Yeah.
may be. I'm using a total hypothetical, but I would say at this point, it's a lot easier for me to just say, hey, either I don't know what I'm doing, or I'm kind of good at this, or you're probably better at this, and then just kind of starting from that place. And that
Yeah.
works, to me across most relationships. So
Nice. Okay. Well, that's the front. That's the front. And so now we get to make our way to the back. What are you feeling? You feel like you want to go first? Ready?
sure, yep.
Okay. All right.
So what I put on this one was fear, criticism, and craving. And the first one around fear in particular, kind of on the flip side of that strength one, I think for a considerable amount of time, I either tried to mask whatever fears would be going on,
Mm,
um, because kind of like what you said, when you grow up, it was either a point of teasing, bullying, or just an emotion that apparently I was not supposed to feel
mm,
as a guy. And um, I would say it is easier for me to recognize when I have those moments. I may not, I will probably more likely express it to someone, close or near.
mm,
Um, but it is definitely a real presence because it never really goes anywhere in your life. And there are things that can come up. I'll give you an example from last week. I had a doctor's visit. I had to get my blood drawn. I absolutely hate getting my blood drawn. It's like from some childhood circumstance. I hate it. And so I'm literally like, I'm talking about I've been stressing about it for like 2 days, which doesn't make any sense because as I'm literally getting my blood drawn, I say to the nurse, I was like, because we had a whole conversation about it. And I basically said to her, I was like, it's really ironic because, like I mentioned, I boxed for about 15 years. I said, you can punch me in the face, no issue. throw throw me around the ring, no problem. You can, I done broke stuff, don't matter. But I'm like, try to draw my blood with this eensy weensy tiny needle, and the fear
oh
that comes back
man.
is like from childhood.
Oh man.
Um, so that's one. Um, criticism for me, and sorry,
Oh, no
criticism for
worries.
me um, is, I think, unfortunately, because the way that I was raised, I had a bunch of criticism that was kind of projected towards me. And what I realized is that I had picked up so much of that
Yeah.
in my internal speak to myself. And it's one where, even in moments of really great success, I think I will still have these moments of criticism or kind of, self doubt or feelings of not good enough or whatever it is, even if externally, everything is going fine. Um, and so that's what I would say. One, that's also difficult. And it's also difficult to catch if I project it towards anyone else,
Mm,
from the way that I may internally speak. And then craving. So I do a pretty considerable amount of work with. This is I'm using the word craving kind of more in connection to like Buddhist texts, because that's a lot of how they'll frame um, some of these like pillars of what we can struggle with, and in particular, that's like chasing sensations, like whatever they are. I used to, have issues with different substances, issues with, chasing feeling. Essentially, is
mm,
pretty much what you're doing. So whether that's with dating or women or whatever it is, like this continuous chase of trying to hit whatever the high is,
mm,
and that I would say is a more complicated struggle point that I've had to do a lot of self work, around, but then
yeah.
also something that's harder to articulate and sometimes just to also open up to around strangers and stuff too.
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
Man. That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. I really like the way you said chasing feelings. I think that's I mean, a lot of, first of all, I resonate in so many ways around the criticism, around fear, around cravings. Like, mm, yeah, yeah, that could have, that could have been mine right there. And I'll, it definitely could have been mine. Hey, folks, I am reaching out to you right now to let you know that we are inviting all of our listeners to become supporters of this podcast. If you find these conversations valuable and meaningful, as we march towards 1 million masks, we know that it's more than just these conversations we need to have. It's more conversations in schools and in communities. And we're going to ask you to help that mission along. We're going to ask you to be a supporter. If you go to the bottom of the show notes, there'll be a link that says support this podcast. And we invite you to be a supporter. Figure out what area makes the most sense for you to support. And we look forward to you being a part of this movement as we make masks with people all over the world. But in these conversations, as we have conversation with men about their masks, from youth all the way to our elders in our community. So thank you for being a part of the podcast, and we'll see you soon. And chasing feelings. And I think that, you know what, it's almost like, it's interesting. It's almost like to avoid one type of feeling. Like my addiction has been food, and mostly like
Hmm.
sweets, flour and
Hmm.
sugar substances. Candy, I could care less. I could do without bread, but you put some flour and sugar together, and I am in another world, and it's
Yeah.
chasing, it's is running from feeling f- feelings to
Hmm.
feeling to chasing this bliss feeling,
Hmm.
because it's much better to feel that than to feel the stuff I'm trying to like escape from. So it's almost like chasing
Yep.
that feeling because I'm trying to run away from that feeling. And interestingly, the one I'm chasing usually is more painful, ultimately,
Hmm.
health
Hmm.
wise. Um, and I've been naming it like this year. I've been really being a lot more mindful of like that part, So let me share mine, and then
Sure.
I'll,
Sure.
I'll, I'll come back to it. So here's mine.
Nice.
Fear, my brother and my nephew, and I put proud of myself on the back. Actually,
Mm.
these things I don't talk much about. So fear, and I've had the chance to talk about them more in these conversations than I ever have before. But like fear of failing, of fear of showing that I'm too proud of myself, right? That's interesting. Those are
Hmm.
both on the back right now. This is the first time I've written proud of myself on the back. I was like, should I write this? Do I want to write this? And I think that like this weekend I did a workshop at a Dominican university here in the Bay Area, and
Mhm.
I on the first night of the work of the training, it was a 2-day thing for athletes. I think I did a really good job, you know. And normally when I leave, I'm always trying to find the stuff that I did wrong because
Mhm.
I'm very critical of myself. A lot of very self critical, and I think that I think I don't want to. I have two parts that I get into the fear. Like I don't want to like think I'm good and then rest and take my foot
Mhm.
off of what has got me to a place where I feel like I'm comfortable in front of an audience and I've learned how to like really pay attention and listen. So I
Mhm.
think I hold back on letting myself feel proud sometimes because I'm afraid it's going to go away. I'm afraid that you start
Mhm.
being proud of it and then you stop working hard to. And so I don't know the balance yet. I'm still trying to figure it out. It's literally my first time writing that I don't talk much about that. I don't. And so
Yeah.
somebody asked me the other week, I had done a workshop and they were like, "Oh, how did it go?" It was a text. And I was like, at first I wrote, "I did a really good job." And I changed the text. I remember changing it and I was like, "Oh, I think it went really well."
Mhm.
Like, I mean, that's a small subtle change in there,
No,
but
it's
and
subtle, but yeah.
from saying that I did a good job to I think it went well, one is very clear and one
Mhm.
is it leaves a lot of room for possibility, right? I questioned myself why I changed that text. I sent it with I think I did a good job. I think I did okay, but I remember like fighting to write. I did a great job, right? Like that's
Yeah.
and I don't want to be I want to be the kind of leader who is willing to brag on myself
Mhm.
more than I'm critical of myself. I'm critical of myself. I'm no doubt about that. But I need to have a balance, and I often don't have a good balance toward the other side. So yeah, that's new, and the fear part is one that I think about a lot. Um, but I'm working through it. I'm slowly working through it. And I think the part of myself also, like in December, I was on a podcast and I was talking about the food. I was talking about the food and the food addictions and I made some commitments like right toward the end of the year. Like I am not waiting until December, January 1st. I'm gonna start right now. I need to be more mindful. I need to be more thoughtful. I need to be more what am I running from? Okay. I want to go eat some of that stuff. Okay. What am I running from? What am I running from? Because if I'm gonna run from feelings towards other feelings, I'm giving other priority to this other feeling. I'm giving a priority to the feeling of that. So those are the ones that are standing out right now. And yeah, thank you for sharing your mask.
Yeah. What about the others? I'm curious about. Well, you kind of tied in the two. What about the nephew and yeah.
Oh, you mean the one I'm trying to ignore? You mean the one
Yeah.
I'm trying to not the one I'm trying
I mean, I'm just curious, you know, you
no, no, I'm glad I appreciate that. I was definitely leaving it at that.
he's like, I'm gonna see if he sees this one.
That's great. That's great. That's great. That's great. Um, yeah, 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 yeah. I think it brings a lot of sadness. I think it brings a lot of
Mm,
sadness. Both my brother and his son, which is my nephew, they're both incarcerated right now.
mm,
And
yeah.
I remember my nephew was I was when he was young, his mom she didn't she was really like not really providing our family a lot of opportunity to connect with him as much as we wanted to. My
Hmm.
brother has spent a lot of my nephew's life in jail, and when my nephew was featured in this documentary, the statement he said on screen was, um, "My dad is in jail, and I don't think I ever remember seeing my dad not in jail."
Wow.
And to now have them both there, I mean, my brother had got out for many years, and just got sucked into the mess, the madness of Oakland streets,
Yeah.
and so now they're both there. It was just kind of like it's sad, right? It's sad to me that I work with young people, I work with young men, I work with men, and I'm powerless against my own family. You know,
Mm,
I'm
mm.
I feel yeah. I don't have the words sometimes because it brings up a lot of sadness. You know, like I feel like I do a good job really helping young men find their voice and find an alternative path to stuff that may be easily available to them. And I didn't, I couldn't, nothing that nothing that I tried seemed to work. And I know it's not my
Yeah,
fault, right? I think
sure, sure.
intellectually, I know it's not my fault, but it's hard not to feel like
Yeah,
I could
take
have done more. You know, like I could have
yeah,
done more. I should have done more. Um, but yeah, so it's a big pain in my heart, you know. So
yeah. And I very
yeah,
much I appreciate you, sharing that too. I mean, it's I have, some family members in similar, positions, and one just I could understand, especially with the kind of work and stuff that you're doing, why that's tricky. And you did say something powerful as well, which is like, it's not your fault, but sometimes that the feelings and stuff still do, reside. And I mean, that's you can get me on a soapbox about just in general the what's going on within the prison systems within the country in general, but um, yeah, that was a that was a hard lesson for me to learn too, or that I've still been learning as well. It's like
yeah,
giving as much support as you can, and then that somebody still has the onus or the ultimate choice within how they act. So yeah, but
that's it.
I really appreciate you sharing that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, thank you for asking. Thank you. I was running from it. I was definitely running. When I wrote it, I was like, okay, I'm gonna not talk about that one, but I'll talk about those two. But not that I don't want,
It's
not that I'm not
yeah,
willing to. Like I put it there. This is what this conversation is about, right?
yeah,
Like I'm clear where I feel. Oh, I could talk about these things all day long. And then those are some of them when they hit in different times at different days, right? Some days I could talk about it and it doesn't hit me, but you know,
yeah,
this one is present, really present right now, you know, like
yeah,
so those are the things that are like really hot, you know. And I think I wish that let me ask you this because I obviously I'm crying here,
mm,
but your how men cry.
yeah.
Can you tell me like how did that come about? And maybe I mean we only have a few minutes left, but I want to hear about it and I want to make
Sure.
sure people know how they can learn more about it. But I want as much as you can tell us right now, like how did that come about? Um,
Yeah. I
Ironically, that
mean,
I started to cry here.
well, I mean, so it's interesting because when we one quick thing is we have done a series of podcasts with a lot of guys too, and one of the things I actually asked them is to tell a story of a time that they did cry. But the process of what I guess how men cry came to be was really me just kind of going through my own process of therapy and healing and realizing one, like what I had kind of done most of my life, which was to turn to my artistry to talk about what was going on internally. And that was before I even, it's a very clear line now that I look at it
Yeah,
now.
yeah,
But it hit like a light bulb where I was like, oh, this is where all my emotional processing is going. I'm like, duh, man. But since then, what we've done is, found it just what we aim to be is the bridge between, hey, I'm maybe thinking about beginning therapy or beginning going on a healing journey, and then actually making that phone call to do so, because there's a lot of
mm,
space in between, and sometimes a lot of resistance points, between I'm actually going to try to go into this healing journey.
yeah,
And so, I aim to open up those conversations through my performance with spoken word, like what's mentioned. We have literary material, and as well as some like digital materials that are on the way to kind of help to solve that problem. And the real deeper thing is just about opening up and opening up the conversations and just destigmatizing, talking about a lot of the things that we've talked about today, because I think a lot of men are socialized um, with certain ideas of how they have to be. And what was one of the biggest striking points for me was looking at definitions of like masculinity and femininity. And when you look at the actual definitions for masculinity, it's like characteristics that are generally displayed by men, or like that's, I'm
Mm,
paraphrasing, but that's pretty much what the definition is. And for women, it's like characteristics that are, displayed by women, which is the most
yeah.
ambiguous thing on the planet. Like that gives you no real information. Yet we really strongly hold sometimes to
Mm,
these, ideas. And so yeah, that's just a lot of what the work has been, is just kind of challenging those conversations. So if you a way that people can kind of support it or get involved now is like, a simple way is just to follow along on social platforms. We have a lot like rolling out this year in the form of those tools that I was talking about, in terms of our literary material with the book that we have, and then we have a digital platform that will be rolling out as well, where you can kind of go at your own pace through just opening up conversations using like art, spoken word, some video material, a bunch of stuff. And then ultimately, we want to be able to help to maybe not necessarily pair people with therapists directly, but at least get them to, resources and platforms that can help to better do that. So,
great. Well, I would love to connect you with the folks from Teams Rising, because I think that that's a powerful, sounds like a powerful tool for them, for young people, definitely for those college athletes that we met with this past weekend. And
mhm.
also, we have our social emotional leadership academy, and maybe after your stuff comes out, that'll be starting in the summer. But maybe we could have you back and have a session with our young men in the
Yeah,
academy.
definitely. Yeah, and honestly, I was just kind of having this conversation too. Is that I was like, I don't know about you, but sometimes work like this can feel a bit daunting, especially when you're on the forefront of it. Because I realize that if when I started, I had a retail business. It's like, okay, when you start a retail business or you start a music company, you can kind of go find the little network groups pretty easily of
Mm,
where are these fellow entrepreneurs, but it's not that
yeah,
many. Hey, I'm having these deep conversations about manhood and masculinity focus groups. So,
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
down to connect and just bounce ideas, all that stuff, as much as possible. And also just be a listening and welcoming ear, to
man,
it.
let's
So
do it. Well, man, this is just the beginning. How about you do this? How about you tell Dexter, thank you, brother, for being here, Dexter Spits. Will you tell folks how they can follow you? You said social media. Tell them where that is. We'll put it all in the
sure,
show notes, but please let folks know how they can follow your work, and we'll make sure we get that out in the notes for folks.
sure. Yeah, so you can follow at How Men Cry. So that's just HOWMENCRY. And then if you want to find my personal page, it's Dexter Spits. So Dexter without the E's. So DXTR underscore and then Spits. If you find those pages on Instagram, pretty much you can find most of our material within the bios of those pages. So,
Man. Well, we will be putting it out there. Thank you for being a part of the Taking Out the Mask podcast, brother. What we've done here, you and I shared our mask publicly, and we invite people all over the world to, you can do it anonymously. You can go to millionmask.org and share your mask there. Right now we're on this march towards our first big milestone, towards 100,000 masks. Our ultimate goal is 1 million, but we're about to hit this milestone in the next 30 to 60 days. So if you haven't made a
nice.
mask yet, if you've been holding back, go make your mask today. And we look forward to you being a part of this movement of reminding people around the world that there's more to you than people can see by just looking at you. Dexter, it's been a pleasure meeting you and having this conversation with you.
Yeah, thank you so much. It really means a lot to me too. It was very much needed today, and yeah, let's just stay in touch, man.
Oh, this
Yeah,
is just the
it's really
beginning.
cool.
I can already feel it. Folks, we'll see you soon. Thanks for being a part of the Taking Out the Mask podcast. We'll see you soon. The Taking Off the Mask podcast is produced by Ryan Louie, Graphics are by Kelly Wong, and a special thanks to the team at Ever Forward, Vanessa Cortez and Choke Allen Alvarez. We'd like to thank everyone who's been a part of the creation of this podcast as we cross the 100th episode milestone and begin the work to the next 100. We hope that everyone who's been a part knows that they're a part of the Taking Off the Mask family. And we look forward to you being a part of it as well. If you like what you heard today, please subscribe, write a 5-star review, and share, as we look forward to continuing to have conversations that matter. Stay tuned for the relaunch of the Million Mask Movement on 11/11/22. That's November 11th of 2022. There's a math problem in there. You can find out more by visiting everforwardclub.org and following us on social media. Take care, and we'll see you soon.